Welcome back, Dive from IndyCar podcast, to yet another episode of the off-seasoning, as it has been for several weeks, and it will be for several weeks. However, we've got yet another barnstormer lined up for this episode. We're going to start off with Jacob Abel joining the show. He's going to speak about his recent test with Chip Ganassi Racing, that we touched on the other week, and sort of the team's future ambitions for 2025, as well as his own personal ones. And then, as we always do, we'll have some sort of silly off-seasoning segments. No news really to cover this week. So we're going to play a fan favourite, IndyCar Tenable, like we briefly did last year, and of course end off with our history as usual. However, let me pass the floor to Jacob Abel, who gives up his time to join the Dive from IndyCar podcast to speak about his ambitions for 2025 and his recent test with Chip Ganassi Racing. So as we said, we are now joined by Jacob Abel, who was the Vice-Champion in Indy NXT last season. Obviously, what 3 months since the season ended now? So how's sort of the off-season stage been for you so far, and what have you been spending your time doing?
Yeah, it's been good. First of all, thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. But yeah, the off-season this year has definitely been pretty busy. A little bit less relaxing, than my off seasons in the past. I've been very fortunate to be driving for obviously a family team the past few years. So there's not a whole lot of silly season that I've ever really been involved in. So this is the first real year of that in the past few years. So yeah, it's not the most fun at times, but I'm definitely enjoying the challenge of trying to get something together for next year and trying to figure out, where I'm going to end up.
And obviously, one of the reasons we are speaking to you is you come off the back at a recent test at Texas with Chip Ganassi Racing. So it was your first experience on the super speedway in the IndyCar. So how did you find that?
Yeah, it was a really cool experience. I mean, first of all, just to be driving with an organization like Chip Ganassi Racing is a thing that, very few drivers get to actually do ever in their careers. So just to do that in the first place was such an honor. Just seeing how they prepare for events, even just a rookie test was super cool to be a part of. Being able to utilize all of their resources and prepare for things was awesome. Then the test itself was pretty next level. The car was very fast. Everybody always says Texas is one of the most daunting tracks on the calendar. Just in terms of the sheer speed of things, it happens very, very quickly. You're doing similar speeds to Indy, but you're only going, half the distance. So you're really always on, basically with the track and all of that, the high banks. It's pretty cool. It was a really fun experience and one that I'll definitely cherish forever. And hopefully I'll take the experience from that test to wherever I go next year.
And just for the kind of average race fan, can you just explain the feeling of kind of going at those speeds on a super speedway? Like, what are the challenges? What is the balance of kind of fear, excitement, adrenaline? Can you just take us through that a little bit?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I think every driver will say it. It's at the end of the day, it's just another race car driving around a racetrack. So you kind of have to numb yourself to all of those feelings, basically from the start. So yeah, they prepared me super well. Ganassi did. So I arrived, I felt very prepared, and the Indy NXT series as a whole prepared me really well, especially going to Nashville last year. It's not quite as daunting as, say, a Texas. We're still on a relatively a road course aero package, but it is called a super speedway, and it is a tri-oval, and it had a lot of very similar characteristics that Texas had. So that was definitely, I think, a huge help going into that, just having an oval where you're flat out and really pushing the limits the whole entire time. But yeah, it's fast. It's really fast. The aero screen kind of numbs your senses a little bit because in the Indy NXT car, we don't have the aero screen. We just have a halo. So you still get a lot of wind on your face, a lot of wind noise, a lot of head buffeting, all of that, where you get really none of it with the aero screen. So that kind of numbs things up a bit. But yeah, it was definitely still pretty quick.
And what kind of senior Ganassi personnel did you have there with you? Was there a driver shaking the car down? I know that's kind of sometimes the case at these tests.
Yeah, there was no driver there shaking it down. It made me feel pretty good about myself that they just kind of let me go out there and go for it right away. They had a lot of objectives that they wanted to accomplish. Honda had a lot of objectives that they wanted to accomplish. So really it was it was a test for me, and it was a test to, get my feet wet and super speedway racing and ovals. But at the end of the day, a race team is going to do whatever they can to accomplish as many goals as possible whenever they get a chance to test. And I think I helped them a lot with that. I think my feedback from Indy NXT, my feel for the car, I think all of that helped me a ton to get up to speed quickly and really help them maximize the day.
And then how did this test come around? Was it a case of you reaching out to the team to try and get opportunities, or were you approached by the team as they needed a rookie to fulfill a test?
Yeah, I was approached by the team for it. I've built a pretty strong relationship with a lot of people in the Chip Ganassi Racing camp over the past year or so, which is a really cool thing. Taylor Kyle, Mike Hole, Chip himself. I've gotten to know a fair few of those guys throughout the past few years, couple of years. So to finally be able to do something with them, and they didn't have a huge selection of drivers to choose from in terms of having basically an Indy NXT driver who had some oval experience. I mean, you're not going to take somebody from the Formula One world and put them in their first time in an IndyCar at Texas. So I think it speaks volumes to the Indy NXT Championship and all of that. And I think, it was just a really cool opportunity, and I was in the right place at the right time.
Just kind of following up on that as well, how much translated from your experience on an oval in Indy NXT? I know Nashville's kind of the closest you've done to Texas, but how much of it translated to the IndyCar on an oval?
Yeah, I'd say a ton, to be honest. I think the Firestone tire and the Dallara, all of that is very, very similar, especially on an oval. I was fortunate enough to drive an IndyCar on a road course last fall with Dale Coyne Racing, and there were similarities, but I think they were a bit less on a road course just because of the dampers, the third springs, all of that. Kind of makes things a little bit more different on a road course. But the ovals, it seems simple from the outside. I think a lot of it is basically your feel for the car and what you expect from the right rear tire and how the weight is transferring and all of that. And I think that is something that is very similar from the Indy NXT car to the Indy car.
And kind of given you mentioned it there as well, kind of rewinding to last year, your first experience in an IndyCar, like how did you find that, obviously being on a road course as opposed to the oval? Did you, just how valuable was that for you as well?
Yeah, I think it was super valuable. Just with a lot of the processes and stuff too are very different in IndyCar. You're very closely related to your engine manufacturer because there's an ongoing battle between Honda and Chevy, and they're trying to optimize things the whole entire time. I drove for Honda in the 2 days that I've been in the car, and to kind of have those processes and stuff already a little bit ironed out helped for sure. But yeah, another thing at the test was the whole hybrid system, trying to figure that out because that was implemented there. I think it was one of the first times that the hybrid system had actually been used on a super speedway. I don't think they've really raced one on it yet. So they had a lot of objectives that they wanted to accomplish with that. And I think it was really good for me to get up to speed with it. It's obviously going to be very different each track you go to, but yeah, just generating and deploying was a really cool experience.
Yeah, I feel like duty bound to ask about the hybrid system now you've brought it up. I suppose that's not something you've really used before. So What was that like? Like, was it a simple thing to use? Was it something that was confusing? Did it kind of add more complexities?
Yeah, it definitely added a lot to it. Texas was a little bit different because you're not lifting all that much. It's usually easy flat when they're there for the race, but nothing had been there for a long time. I think we might have had a slightly different tire or something. So we were lifting a little bit, but when you're flat, there's obviously no off throttle time for it to regen. So you kind of have to do all of that on your own and balancing when to do that. It was a really cool experience. I think it's definitely significant. It's going to be super interesting to see how they use it at Indy, especially in qualifying when you do have 4 laps that are flat, hopefully, and seeing, what strategy different teams, different engine manufacturers are going to study and try and use. I think it'll probably end up all being the same, and there's going to be one thing that's the fastest, but to get to that point, I think is definitely going to take a little bit.
You obviously touched on this right at the start, but looking towards next season, the spaces are filling up in the field. So are you still exploring full-time opportunities in the field at this moment?
Yeah, I think so. I think, everybody knows basically the seats that are left. I'm trying to slot myself into one of those, essentially. I think it's still my goal to be a full-time IndyCar driver and compete and succeed in that series. And I think I've done everything that I needed to at the lower levels to prove that I deserve a shot. But unfortunately, that's not enough these days. Obviously, you need to find funding, whether it be sponsors, partners, anything like that. So that's just kind of what we're trying to put together. We're working hard every single day on it. But yeah, those seats are going quickly, but just trying to slot myself into one of them.
I hate asking this question to people in your situation, but if IndyCar isn't an option for you next year, do you have contingency plans? You're looking at somewhere like IMSA, for example?
Yeah, I haven't looked a ton into it. I've had talks with different teams in IMSA, both on the GT side and the prototype side of things. There's definitely options out there, but I think it's going to be interesting because obviously the IMSA season starts before the IndyCar season, so I hope I don't miss an opportunity in IMSA for holding out for IndyCar, but that's kind of the risk I'm willing to take. It's been my dream to get into IndyCar, to race in the Indy 500 for my whole entire life. That's why I've gone up basically only racing in the Road to Indy Championships and in Indy NXT the past 3 years. That's been my goal. So yeah, IMSA is fantastic. I don't think it would necessarily even be really a fallback. They have some of the biggest races in the world, the 24 Hours of Daytona, the 24 Hours of Le Mans. All of that are spectacular races that I would love to do, regardless. And yeah, I think it's going to depend on kind of that right time, right place thing. But the majority of mine and everybody that I'm working with's energy is directed towards IndyCar.
And I guess with those seats remaining, there's sort of been some suggestions there might be split programs going on, that sort of thing. So I guess for your case, even if it's a part-time schedule, it's about getting your foot in the door and just taking any opportunity you can.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look back in the past, you see guys like Linus Lundqvist. I mean, he didn't have a seat in IndyCar after he won the Indy NXT Championship, and he got an opportunity, and I think it was probably August of that year, and he was able to capitalize on it, and he got himself into a full-time seat for the next year. So not completely getting depressed if we don't get something full-time together, knowing that there are options out there. The charter program has changed a lot of that a little bit, just in the number of drivers you can have per seat. I think you're going to have a lot more people looking at just getting full-time programs. I think every team wants to have all of their drivers in full-time and be able to work throughout the year. But yeah, if nothing happens on the full-time side of things, I think we'll definitely still be looking in the part-time side. And, like I said, just trying to find whatever opportunities I can to be able to prove myself is going to be kind of the position we're in.
And obviously with the Texas test, you said it was important from the team side, but also thinking kind of from your side, was that done at all kind of with an Indy 500 debut in mind, getting a bit of preparation on a super speedway? Is that something that was kind of at the back of your head when you were doing that test?
Yeah, for sure. I think nowadays they don't let drivers essentially go straight to Indianapolis and get on track there and go through our ROP. You actually have to go to Texas, or you have to go to, I think they added a couple more ovals to that before they let you even go to Indy. So that was definitely a huge box that was checked. For if it gets to a last minute situation, I can just start in May. If I had to, I can go through ROP the first week of May or whatever and get going. I think that definitely puts me a little bit more in contention for any of those last minute seats. At the end of the day, I don't want to really be thinking about those. I'd love to have, a program set up in the next month or so and have a full season to be able to prepare and do everything. But if it were to come to it, yeah, I've already accomplished that goal, and that's regardless of what we do.
Are you kind of thinking about the Indy 500, getting a program for that as well? Or, how are you balancing doing that while also still kind of exploring those full-time options as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, right now, a lot of the part-time Indy 500 seats are kind of full because, believe it or not, everyone wants to do the Indy 500. So it is tough. I think, we're still kind of looking pretty squarely at trying to do the full season. And, I feel relatively confident about that. I haven't lost complete hope yet. But yeah, if we get further down the road and that doesn't look like it's going to happen, yeah, maybe we can talk about doing an Indy only thing or something like that. But, I think there's no rush into doing Indy. Obviously, it's the biggest race on the calendar. It's the one that costs the most money. So if I could, potentially do 4 other races or do just Indy, that's a decision we're going to have to make because that's kind of where it falls in the budget side of things.
And kind of at that point down the road, if you were to kind of unfortunately get to the stage where, well, I say unfortunately, driving the Indy 500 would still be cool, but if you were to get to just that stage, could we see you in an Abel Motorsports car, for instance? Or, could we even read into anything with the fact that you tested with Ganassi? Could that be an option if it was to arise, for instance?
I certainly wouldn't say no if Ganassi called me and asked me to do the Indy 500 with them. But no, I don't think there were any intentions of that with that test or anything like that. On the Abel Motorsports side of things, we're still working on it. We're trying to find a solution. There's kind of 2 separate entities now. There's Jacob Abel looking for a seat, and there's Abel Motorsports, who had a successful program 2 years ago and is trying to have another entry into the Indy 500. So they're still working hard on that. It all kind of comes down to engines and basically just engines. If you can get an engine for it, that means that, we'll probably be able to enter an entry, whether that be me or whoever else. So yeah, I think Abel Motorsports definitely wants to do that, but it's whether they'll be able to kind of put everything together to get there.
And kind of just following on from that, what was the situation last May that kind of prevented the team from running? And what is the situation now with how many chassis they have and similar things to that?
Yeah, I think we have chassis. We have cars ready to go, cars, however you want to put it. But I think it's all going to kind of come down to getting an engine and the budget side of things too. I think those 2 things are 2 of the main things that need to come together, and then everything else can kind of fall into place after that. But if you don't have those 2 objectives, it's pretty hard to get anywhere, especially if you don't have an engine. It's kind of hard to make a car go around if you don't have one of those.
Slightly difficult.
Looking back at your Indy NXT career, you picked up 10 podiums, you got 3 wins last season. Obviously, you didn't quite get a championship, I guess, which was the goal for you. But how do you still reflect on the season overall?
Yeah, I think it was super, super strong. Obviously, I've had a lot of time to think back at it. Yeah, I think I'm happy with what we were able to do. I think maybe I would be a little bit happier even if we weren't leading the championship for the first, say, part of it and made a late push to get up to second. But I still think I'm very happy with the result that the whole team has done. We started this program 3 years ago with 1 car basically from the ground up. And not to sound selfish, but I've kind of been the guy fostering the program along and been the lead driver for the past 3 years. So it's been a super rewarding experience. It's been a little bit bittersweet, especially as we got to the end of everything, just to see how far we've come. I think you look at the Abel Motorsports program, I'm pretty sure we have 4 drivers announced for next season. And I think they're going to be really strong drivers who are going to have a shot at running for the championship. And I think that just speaks to what we were able to accomplish over this last year and the past 3 years and building a program all the way up to what it is now. It's a little bit bittersweet, like I said, because I think the team now is really, really solid. I think we made a lot of progress through this 2024 season. I hope all of the best for Miles and Callum and Yuvan and all the drivers who are going to be driving for us next year. But there's a little bit of me that's like, man, if I just went out there next year now, imagine what we'd be able to do. But I think, like I said, I feel like I've proved what I needed to prove, and it's time to make that step in my career to move on. But yeah, really looking forward to my future and Abel Motorsports' future sort of separately.
And in that third season, what do you think changed for you? Obviously, you got a lot more podiums, a lot more wins, and we're sort of getting used to you to being consistently on the podium, fighting up the front. So what sort of made a difference in that third year? Would you say it's just experience, or did you change anything personally?
Yeah, I think experience was probably the biggest thing. You rarely see rookies succeed nowadays in Indy NXT. I think it just speaks to the competitiveness, the uniqueness of the tracks, the ovals, your street courses, all of that. It's hard to really succeed in that first year. And for us as a team, especially, we were a brand new team that first year, and I didn't have, winning drivers data and video and all of that from years prior. So I think from our first race to our last race, we just kept getting better and better and better. And I think that's the reason that, we had a lot of success in this 2024 season. I mean, if you look at it, I still feel like I should have finished third in the championship in 2023. I had basically 2 DNFs in the last 2 rounds, but before that I was running third for the last part of the championship. And, then it would have only been a 1 position gain in the championship over 2 years. But yeah, I think it's regardless, like you guys said, we were competing for wins week in and week out. And, you always feel like you could get a couple more. And I feel like there was a couple that got away, and that's probably when the championship started to slip away. But I think now the team is a race winning and championship winning organization. And I think I was getting there as a driver, obviously a race winning driver now, but not a championship winning driver yet. But, I think those two kind of were happening in sync, and that's, I think, what led to that success.
And I guess it must have been pretty cool for you kind of going through your kind of whole junior career, a lot of your career with your family team. Like, how important a part of your career was your family in facilitating your racing, for instance?
Yeah, it was massive. Kind of going all the way back to the start. My dad's a businessman. There's no question that you have to essentially fund yourself in getting started in racing. For the most part, no one's going to see you in go-karts and say, hey, I think this kid's the next, Lewis Hamilton, and here's $1 million to go race for the rest of your career. But the way that my dad saw it from the start was, instead of writing this check and just seeing it disappear and Jacob go race for this team for 1 year, why don't we start to build something? Let's buy a car, let's get a trailer, let's rent some shop space and do all this. He had a lot of connections with people in the IndyCar paddock and all of that, just from friends of his growing up. And that's kind of what started the whole entire thing. And I think now more than ever it's looking like it was a really good idea. There were a lot of times in the past, 5 or 6 years that I would have loved to go drive for a Yuncos or a Cape Motorsports or an Andretti or something like that. That would have been the easy option for sure. Go in there and just get a race winning car and drive the car that just drive it the same that the guy did the year before and won the championship. But instead we kind of started building this thing throughout the past, however many years. And now with me not there, it's still now a standing business on its own. And I think it's going to be a race winning team for hopefully years in the future. And I think it is kind of paying back for itself now, just on a emotional side, especially. So yeah, it's been super rewarding to really, really build something that isn't just my career.
And kind of specifically looking at what the team has done at kind of that top ladder series in Indy NXT, even over just your 3 years there, you were guiding the team forward, you were the leader. How much has that kind of molded you? How has that shaped you? And how much have you learned from that? And then ultimately, how valuable was it? Or just what did it feel like to have achieved that runner-up position in the championship with your family team? I know you've kind of touched on it briefly there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that's going to help me hopefully for my whole entire career. I basically got thrown into the deep end. I didn't have essentially a lead driver to learn off of. I had some teammates back in the day, a long time ago, Kyle Kirkwood in 2018, I think it was, and Parker Thompson in 2019. But since then, it's been sort of, you're the guy, and if we're going to succeed or not is going to kind of be centered around you. What are you going to do? And then that's the same thing, in terms of setup and all of that, just developing a car. Yes, we have engineers that had experience with the Indy NXT car before, but in 2023, they threw a new tire at us. So it completely changed everything. And, I was basically having to lead the charge on giving the engineers a direction to go and giving them feedback. And it was basically my success. And if I wanted to win, I had to give them the right feedback to build a good car. I mean, we have fantastic engineers, and, I think we had some really, really solid cars through 2024. But, I think it was something that I kind of had to make the decision on. And I think that's going to be something that's really going to help me in the future. I think it was something that showed at the Ganassi test, my feel for the car, and we were able to efficiently work through a bunch of different changes. And, the engineer was saying that, and he was saying that was a really, really good thing. So yeah, I think that definitely stems from being with Abel Motorsports and kind of being that lead driver for so long.
That's really cool insight.
Thank you.
What do you sort of see for the NXT team moving forwards? You've obviously got 4 cars now. Miles was pretty quick at the recent test. The other thing is you got Callum Hedge coming over, came 4th last year. Miles looked strong at times, so did Juven. So I guess what are the expectations for a team now? Is it to fight the sort of Andretti's and the HMDs, and I guess ultimately to win championships?
Yeah, I think 100%. I think, we had so much interest in the team after specifically this year. And some of that was attributed to what I was able to do, at the front, winning races, getting on the podium a bunch of times, but also it was Juven too. I think Juven really backed up a lot of what I was able to do, because, from the outside, it's very easy to look at Abel Motorsports and like, oh, well, of course, Jacob's doing well. He's the team owner's son. But for Juven to go out there and get on the podium and have really strong results, especially on the ovals, I think showed what we were able to accomplish and showed how good our cars were and all of that. And that kind of brought a lot of attention to us and a lot of interest from drivers. I think at the end of the day, we're still a family organization and a family team. Even though I'm not going to be there, it's a bit of a smaller culture. I think we have a really, really good culture within the team. Everyone is really a family. We spend our Christmases together. We have holiday parties and all of that we really enjoy spending time together. So I think that is shown in the interest that we've gotten from drivers. And yeah, I think everybody feels confident coming here that they can go out and win a championship.
And are you sort of at a stage now in your career where the Jacob Abel is a separate entity to Abel Motorsports, where sort of you were one package previously? Is it a case of not that you want to disassociate from the team, but the team is now sort of a separate thing to yourself and the family?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely a separate thing for me. I've always liked to look at it as a separate thing. I think that's how you have to do it. My dad looks at it separately. We have John Bruner, who's the team manager for Abel Motorsports, and he's certainly not my manager. So I think those things are separate, and I think John being in place and everybody being in place on Abel Motorsports allows my dad to kind of be a dad, cheer for me, whatever. I think he still wants the success for the team now, especially too. But yeah, I think it is definitely separate entities, but I will still be involved. I think a bit more than most drivers are who are leaving the team. I think I doubt that a guy like Louis is going to be, back with Andretti trying to help their drivers through things and preparing and stuff. And, fair. I wouldn't do it if it wasn't Abel Motorsports' his team. But, I really do want them to succeed. And I want that team to be successful for all the people that are there. They really are my family. My engineer had been my engineer for the past 4 years. He's now going to be with, I think, Miles or Callum, and I want them to, still succeed. So I'm going to do whatever I can to help them.
So I guess obviously the goal is for you to get to IndyCar, but in sort of the spare time, you're going to be around the team trying to coach the drivers, I guess just support the effort to try and get you the team's goal to win the championships.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't really need to be there. We have everyone in place. The engineers are super strong. We have Spencer Piggott, who's the driver coach, and he's still going to be there. But I'm going to be there to help as much as I can. If I were driving in 2024 and I had, I guess it would have been Hunter McElroy, who finished second in the championship the year before, I would have been, talking his ear off with questions and trying to use him as a resource as much as I can. So, I hope the guys try and use me as much as they can, but I'm not going to push myself on them at all. I think I was racing against all of them last year. So I think it's a little bit of a different scenario just because, they are more of my peers, but yeah, I'm going to try and be as much of a resource as I can.
And I know this is probably a question that obviously your dad may be able to answer a bit better, but there have been mentions over time of Abel Motorsports putting together or trying to put together a full-time IndyCar effort. Obviously, there is now the charter system. So has that killed off that sort of prospect? Is it something that's still kind of viable?
Yeah, I think it definitely hasn't killed it. It certainly hasn't helped it. That's for sure. But I think, my dad's, again, he's a businessman. He wants businesses to grow. And the next logical step for our team is, I don't think we're going to add any more Indy NXT cars. So we're going to try and grow to whichever championship it is. Obviously, IndyCar is the easy answer, but it's an extremely hard championship to enter. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it necessarily kills the dream, though.
Any ideas to when you may be testing an IndyCar or when people might see you on track soon? Or I guess during the entire off season?
Yeah, not totally sure when the next time would be. Hopefully it'll be with the team that I'm going to be racing with. I think that's kind of my goal, is to get a deal done and use my remaining test days, my rookie test days, my evaluation days, with a team that I'm hopefully going to be racing with next year and can try and provide as much information and start building together for the season.
Well, I guess just to end off, a fairly broad one, but I guess open for interpretation. Let's fast forward a decade, 10 years time. What would you want to look back on your career? And I guess what would you be happy with? What would you be pleased with from your overall motorsports goal? Yeah,
I think just having a successful career. Obviously, successful is completely relative. I want to be an IndyCar short term. That's my goal. I think what I do when I get there, I'd like to think the sky's the limit, but you never really know until you get there. So you kind of have to think pretty short term in this business and be very open. I could also end up down the sports car route somehow. So it's like just trying to keep all my options open and just taking every opportunity as it comes. And I think looking back on it in 10 years, all I can hope is that I've, taken every opportunity that I've got and I've capitalized on them.
Jacob, that's all we got for you. We really appreciate your time and we wish you the best and trying to get onto the field next year. Seats are filling up, but we certainly hope we'll see you there. So thanks for joining us and best of luck.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
So thanks to Jacob for his time. Hopefully you learned a little bit about Jacob Abel and what his plans are for next year. As we said, we'll do some classic off-season DIVEBOMB IndyCar podcast content and start off with our IndyCar Tenable as we did last year. So just to give you a bit of an idea of what Tenable is, for example, we give each other subjects which have 10 answers and we have to basically work out what the answers are. You get 3 lives, so you can have 3 incorrect answers, otherwise you're out. So for example, it could be the last 10 different winners of the Indy 500. We have to name the last 10 different winners of the Indy 500. It could be you have to name the last 10 different IndyCar winners, and you just have to name the last 10 different IndyCar winners, something along those lines. But we'll make it a bit harder than that. We did this last year in one of the episodes. Might have been its own episode. I can't really remember. But we'll do it as a little one-off. We've got 2 rounds for each other. So, yeah. Do you want to guess first, or do you want to provide first?
I will provide first.
Okay.
Give myself a bit more time to get psyched up. So I will do what I perceive to be the slightly easier of my two. Who are the last 10 runner-ups in the IndyCar Championship? The last 10 individual drivers who have finished as runner-up.
Okay, fine. So take it different ones. So we'll start off with Colton Herta.
Yes.
Yep, cool. 23 was it was only last year, and I've already forgotten. It was Scott Dixon.
Yep.
I presume 2020. What's the equal? 22 on now was won by Power, and second was Newgarden.
Yep.
And he was second for 3 years in a row, I think.
Yeah, he had a big run at finishing second.
Power.
Power is one, yeah.
Okay, so I'll put him somewhere around here. Helio Castroneves will be on there, I believe.
Yes.
2020 was a Dixon year, which is Newgarden. 2019 was Newgarden. Pagenaud?
Pagenaud is on there. That is 6. 4 more to find.
Good progress here. This is, I guess, you second guess yourself all the time now. Ooh, Newgarden's run of constant second place is throwing me off because I'm having to go back a little bit here.
Yeah, this is what I've realised, which makes it not too easy, but also somewhat challenging.
Somewhat challenging.
Not too challenging. They're all names you will have heard of course.
I'd certainly hope so. Just who's at the top teams for... What about Ryan Hunter-Ray?
He is not on there.
So he's a champion, but never a runner-up. Interesting. What about Dario Franchitti?
Dario is also not on there.
Oh my goodness me. Okay, well that's slightly concerning.
So one more lifeline.
That's annoying because I've gone for 2 champions, so I thought it might just be not obvious, but Juan Pablo Montoya is definitely on there.
Yep.
I know that. It's obviously
3 to find, 1 lifeline.
Drew to Dixon in 2015. I know that. You know, if you got names like Dan Weldon or Ryan Briscoe or...
Interestingly, I'm just looking at Hunter Ray. He was 4th in 2018. Other than that, he's never finished higher than 6th, apart from when he won the championship in 2012.
That is surprising. I feel like I'm taking a risk here. Kanan?
Kanan is on there, yes.
He is. Good.
Yep. 2 more to find.
2 more. This is where it gets rather difficult. I wonder how long this goes back. That's the other thing you've got to bear in mind. How long these sort of things go back. Just trying to think of Indy 500 winners as well as the other thing. Not that you're never going to get like Sasato up there. You know, you've got like Bourdais could be in the mix, but I don't think it was sort of competitive machinery. Penske had a pretty similar lineup for quite a long time, so that's going to be them. Let's go for Weldon.
Weldon is correct.
Oh, I didn't think he would be. Okay. So I've got 1 more. Actually, considering I had 2 wrong a minute ago, I'm actually quite happy with that. Let's go for...
Okay.
Let's go for Hornish.
Incorrect. It is Alexander Rossi.
Oh, yeah. 2019. Fair enough. Yep. Yep. Fair enough. I forgot about
2018, but it is Alexander Rossi.
Oh, 2018. Fine. Right. I'll go for a slightly easier one. The last 10 different European race winners.
Wow. Okay, so we'll go for Christian Lundgaard.
It's number 2.
Alex Palou.
It's number 1. That was the only European to win a race this year.
I guess we will go for Felix Rosenqvist.
It's number 6.
Okay, Simon Pagenaud.
It's number 5.
Europeans. Marcus Ericsson.
It's number 3.
Okay, so I am missing number
4, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay. 4. I'll go for Justin Wilson.
It's number 10.
Okay. Number 4 is the one that's annoying me. Thing is, when you're in this sort of quiz situation, everything drains from your brain.
Absolutely.
Like, I can't even think of European drivers. I can't even think of what teams are in the.
Yeah, oh no.
Renus VK is one of them.
Yes, he's number 4.
Okay. So now I'm what's 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, and 9.
Yes.
Okay.
Wilson's actually number 9, not number 10.
Okay.
That's incorrect.
Cool. Actually, I can afford a guess, so I'll just say Dan Weldon just to decide that.
He was 11th.
Okay.
Not quite.
That is a long time with not a lot of European race winners.
Yeah. It's averaging about 1 a season, even less than that, actually.
Okay.
1 different one, I should say.
At least I've got all the recent ones. See, France's... Oh, Sebastian Bourdais.
It's number 7.
Okay. The issue with this is I can't think of European drivers to even, like, throw a guess out there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not just going to guess Jack Harvey. So Bourdais 7. We're looking back at, like, mid-teens now, aren't we? It's a genuinely really good question. It's got me thinking very hard.
One of these has won an Indy 500.
Dario.
Yes, it's 10th.
Okay, so at least that's the one I would have completely kicked myself with. I mean, I know I had a clip, but I don't think it's a very good listening experience of throwing the towel. Do you want to give me the year?
2014 was the last one.
So that's going back quite a while. This is number 10.
Sorry, this is number 8. Dario was number 10.
Okay. No, I'm going to throw in the towel. Go on, just enlighten me.
Mike Conway.
Ah, so it was another Brit.
It was another Brit in Mike Conway.
Yeah, I'm kicking myself a bit, but not as much as Dario. Let's just put it that way.
Fine. So I'm next up. Another 10 to do.
Do you want me to give yours?
Yes, let's go for it.
So this one is going to be a bit more difficult. Just because we don't want them both being... Well, not the last one was easy, but 9 out of 10 performance was very solid. The last 10 AJ Foyt Racing drivers.
Oh,
I saw your eyes make a funny flicker there. So see how this goes.
Santino Ferrucci.
Yep.
Stingray Rob.
Yep.
Benjamin Peterson.
Yep. I will say this includes 2025.
Okay. Well, David Malukas then in that case.
I didn't want you to miss out on Lucas, not because I'm going to get that anyway.
Let's go for Carl Kirkwood.
Yep.
JR Hildebrand.
I mean, yeah, he's not on the list, but I know for a fact that is right. So
Tatiana Calderon.
that is also right and also not on my list. So I'm never clicking Wikipedia again.
I'm going to go for Dalton Kellett.
Yep.
Sebastian Bourdais.
Yep. You might be surging towards a full house here.
So I've got 3 guesses to get 1. And I don't actually know.
Okay.
Tony Kanaan.
It's not Tony Kanaan.
Oh, it's close.
Tony Kanaan is very close to... It's very close to being Tony Kanaan, but it is not Tony Kanaan.
That's frustrating. So 2021 would have been Bourdais in the 14. I don't even know what the other number was. Might have been the 4. But I'm sure Kellett did most of that season. Matthias Least.
Was on my initial incorrect list, but no, it is not Matthias Least. That was the one that I thought was going to trip you up in my initial list, so well done. One more guess. This is it.
Right, I need to hope that I'm not missing one from recent years. Charlie Kimball.
Charlie Kimball is correct.
Bingo.
Did not qualify for the Indy 500 in 2021. Also ran on the IMS road course, and I think that's Long Beach.
Nice.
Well done. Full house.
Right. Your second list is the 10 most recent IndyCar drivers who've also raced in Formula One.
So we will go for Roman Grosjean,
Is on that.
Marcus Ericsson,
Is on that.
Pietro Fittipaldi,
Is on that.
I guess Sebastian Bourdais.
Is on there.
I can't be struggling this early on. Come on. Alexander Rossi,
Is on that.
Kevin Magnussen,
Yep, is on that.
Juan Pablo Montoya,
Is on that.
Fernando Alonso.
Is on that.
Yeah, I've surprised myself, to be honest. It's just I don't actually know if this guy drove F1 or not, or whether I'm just my brain is playing tricks. I've got enough in hand. Mike Conway. Did he drive an F1?
No, never drove an
He
F1.
didn't. Okay.
He wouldn't make the time frame anyway, I don't think.
Okay. Takuma Sato.
Yep, is on that.
The supposed harder ones we're actually rattling through. By doing I have 2 guesses for this final one.
Yeah.
I
I think this is the hardest one on the list, in fairness.
might need to take a clue. It's already admitting a bit of defeat taking a clue, but
The last race was for a team that's no longer on the grid or in the field.
Max Chilton.
Max Chilton is the correct answer.
Well, took clues for me. You did it clueless, so I think you are crowned the winner.
That's good. We should do that one then soon.
Yeah, I mean, they actually don't take that long to make, so
Maybe more season content now, but yeah.
stay tuned.
Right, we're now in December. Christmas period. We're getting to that festive period. We'll have a Christmas special probably this year. We need to get working on that. But if you're looking for the perfect Christmas present for all your IndyCar friends, where better to go than the Formula Motorsport website? The best place to get your IndyCar merchandise in the UK and the rest of Europe. How much better to get in the festive spirit with buying your loved one's IndyCar merchandise? You never know. Maybe your family will get into IndyCar once you buy them some merch from the FMS site.
You can use the discount code 5BOMB, or one word, FIVEBOMB, to gain 5% off products on the FMS site. Visit the highlights on the DIVEBOMB Motorsport Instagram account for a link to an exclusive VIP section on the FMS store, courtesy of DIVEBOMB.
And after you've headed to the DIVEBOMB website to read all the articles on there, you can find a pink banner on the homepage which takes you to the Formula Motorsport website, or you can head to formulamotorsport.co.uk.
Stay tuned for exclusive giveaways, events, and other content.
As we always like to do, we're going to end off with some history. So my period is 1955 to 1959. And as we know, as I mentioned last week, this was that sort of weird period where the Indy 500 was actually part of the F1 World Championship. So a bit of an odd period in the Indianapolis 500 era, but people who won the race would end up being about second or third in the championship by the end of the race because about the second round of the Formula One season. So in this period, I've had the likes of Giuseppe Farina attempt it, but unable to get to speed, so didn't qualify for the Indy 500. Juan Manuel Fangio didn't qualify for the race in 1958. Farina didn't qualify in 1956 and withdrew in 1957. So even the F1 greats had real struggles at the Indy 500 trying to get more points for the championship. However, I'm going to go to 1957 for my story this week. And it's a man named Sam Hanks, who was the winner of the Indianapolis 500. His story is quite an interesting one. He won the race in his 13th attempt. And I believe to this day, that is still the longest wait for a 500 win in his 13th attempt. And he was very much considering retiring a year before in 1956. He finished second in that race, but then he agreed to come back in 1957 for his 13th attempt. And in his 13th attempt, he finally won the Indianapolis 500. Kanaan had 12, so he's second on the list, but it took Hanks 13 times. But what the interesting thing about Hanks' story is that he retired in Victory Lane. He's told the sportscaster Charlie Brockman on the Speedway Radio Network and public address, yes, that was it. This is my last 500. He was asked, why, Sam? And then, I believe you're crying. And then Hanks replied, yes, Charlie, I am. And I believe you are too. So Hanks was a really liked guy in the IndyCar field. It was one of those popular 500 wins of all time. It was one of those where Hanks had been so close to winning so many times, and everyone sort of wanted him to have the feel-good story. So he did win. The drivers were really happy for him. The fans were really happy for him. I noticed somewhere where it was the most popular 500 win of all time, even to this day, because of all the trials and tribulations that Hanks had to go through his IndyCar career. So the thing about the engine I was highlighting was the Offenhauser engine was mounted on its side and shifted off-center to get a lower center of gravity. Also reduced frontal area and counterbalanced the body roll in the turns. And it was actually went back-to-back because the same chassis would win in 1958 with Jimmy Bryan. It was actually the first ever race where the winner got over $100,000 as well. Hanks also became the only driver to participate in the Indy 500 before World War II. He served in the war and then came back. Imagine that happening now. Newgarden winning it, and he's like, "I'm done now. That's it." Not even
That would be amazing.
I'm retired.
Yeah, I mean, or a Scott Dixon. Imagine what a try. Or I guess the most apt one would probably be Helio Castro Neves wins his 5th and says, "That's it from me. Never see me again in an IndyCar." That would be cool. I actually want that to happen next year.
Yeah, maybe I take inspiration from Sam Hanks. But that's my story. The story of Sam Hanks, who had an engine which was off-centered, had served in World War II and came back to the Indianapolis 500, took him 13 attempts, and then he retired in victory lane. So a cool story there for Sam Hanks, the winner of the 1957.
Feel good story.
Feel good story. The winner of the 1957 Indianapolis 500, which F1 world champion Giuseppe Farina didn't even qualify for.
There we have it.
We're getting to 1960s next week, so we're actually getting to a more prominent time in IndyCar history. So we're getting there, which is pretty cool. So that's what we've got time for this week. I would like to thank Jacob for his time again to speak to us. As we said a bit earlier in the episode, we thank him for joining us. That is why this episode is a bit later this week, because this was recorded on Tuesday. But by the time this does go out, we have how many days until St. Petersburg?
88 days until cars hit the track for opening practice.
Excellent. Is there a test this week, Laguna Seca, or is that next
There
week?
is actually. That is happening as we speak on Tuesday.
As we speak on Tuesday, fine. So we've got Louis Foster's there, Toby Sowery's there. Any other names that we're aware of?
Not sure, no.
Not sure.
But Louis did tell us he was going to be there. So.
Two very good friends of the podcast, so we'll try and give you their perspective of how the test went at some point. But we know those two are there. I'm not sure about anybody else, but those two are there for you. But for this week, thanks very much for watching, thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.